Hello, my merry band of O-Satters, and welcome to this, the 82th, I think, podcast episode of the Sockmatician Podcast. My name is Nathan Taylor, otherwise known as Sockmatician, and I am recording this in a small little knitting studio that I like to call home, somewhere in the north of London. And today is the 20th of January. Hello, welcome, how are you, and what is going on in your world? I know, right, this is like a really rare occurrence. You know, like buses, there's no Sockmatician podcast for 18 months and then two come along in the matter of 3 weeks. Well, I promised I was going to try and keep up with my regularity of schedule, and that's exactly what I'm planning to do. Last time, boy, what a big one that was. That there was so much knitting content in that, and I sort of whizzed through lots of things. Obviously, I've spoken about most of the stuff I've been doing over the last 18 months, apart from all the stuff that's in the book. And I'm still not going to talk about the patterns that I've written and designed and knitted for the book itself. The book, of course, being Sockmatician's Double Knitted Brioche ebook. I'll give you a book update later on, but this is not about the book either. This is about me, and for anyone who's new to the podcast, that's what I do. I ramble on a little bit about what I've been doing since I last saw you, and I talk about my knitting life and my non-knitting life as well. I've just realised I can see myself in the screen there. Ladies, you won't know what this is all about. I've got mask beard. My beard is getting a little bit longer than it has been for a while at the moment, and the problem is when you wear a mask. When you wear a mask like this, going out and about, then it just sort of squishes and pushes things down. And if, for example, if I go out and I need to go on the tube or on a bus fairly early in the morning, fairly soon after I've had a shower and washed my beard, then it may still be a little bit damp. And it sort of sets in this weird sort of squished in position. We used to worry about hat hair, now it's mask beard. It's a thing. And don't get me started about merping either. A merp. It's a word I invented. I'm sure I'm not the first, but it's when you burp inside your mask. Gross. I've started already. I'll tell you what I was doing in a second. So what have I been doing since I last saw you? Well, thank you to everybody who has sort of said hello since the last podcast. It really is lovely to be back, and it's been lovely to catch up on all of your comments. I don't have time to respond to them all, but if anyone's got any specific questions, then I do try to do that. But I do read them, and I do try to like them all on the thread down below. So please don't think that you're sort of writing into the ether. You're very much not. I very much do appreciate all of the contact that you make. Thank you very much for that. Also, as I said, welcome to any newbies, new O-Satters. So for anyone who doesn't know what an O-Satter is, I'm going to do a little catch up. Why not? Years and years ago, when I first started this sort of journey into the knitting world, I had this my little hashtag, OSAAT, OSAT, or OSAT as I used to call it, OSAT, OSAAT, and it stands for one stitch at a time. You'll have heard me say this at the end of the previous episode, if that's the first one you watched, and pretty much all of them, where I talk about how life is a work in progress, just take it one stitch at a time. And it's always been my mantra. When I was teaching a lot publicly, I would always tell people, don't be frightened of this stuff. It doesn't matter how complicated the finished object is, no matter how complex the techniques are within a certain piece, it's only ever one stitch at a time. And if you start thinking about things as only being one stitch at a time, you don't get overwhelmed by the whole thing. So that's always been my thing. It's been my mantra, one stitch at a time, hashtag OSAAT. And then some years ago now, I was contacted by a lady in Finland who told me that OSAAT, pronounced osat in Finnish, means you can. which is wonderful. So all you lot, anyone who enjoys the Sockmatician podcast or enjoys anything about the world of Sockmatician, you are the O-Satters, and that is the name that I have bequeathed upon you, and I hope it's one you like, because I think it means nice things. It means you can, whatever you set your mind to, you can. Just take it one stitch at a time. So since I last saw you, blimey, I'm a poorer man than I was. Unfortunately, we've had some car trouble. Ben and I bought a new car in June last year. So then I'm going to jump you straight back to the beginning of this story. So in June last year, felt like the 1st or 2nd of June, it was a very hot night, and Ben was going to visit a friend, and it was about 10 o'clock in the evening, and it was running an errand of mercy, don't need to go into that now, and he was going to the car, which was parked in a marked bay on the side of the road, just around the corner from where we live, and it was a very hot night, and he wanted to take some water with him, but he didn't have a bottle here, but he knew there was an empty bottle in the car. This is relevant. So he was carrying a sort of, I think we've got like a glass pint bottle, which with no stopper. So he filled that up, and he was going to take it and pour it into the other bottle when he got to the car. So he unlocked the car, sat in, closed the door, started transferring, hadn't turned the engine on, hadn't put his seatbelt on, and a car came around the corner and smashed into the front of the car while he was sitting in it. He was unhurt, as was the driver of the other car, thankfully. So the car was very, very badly damaged, and it wasn't worth very much, and it was written off by the insurance company. So we got £1,000 back for the value of our old car, which was a really nice car as well. We loved it. It was a Golf, and it was quite old. I just snapped a finger. I'm so sorry. It was quite old, but it stood us in good. It was in good nick, pretty much. It was just a bit battered. So we had to buy a new car. So thankfully, my mother stepped in, and thank you, and we've we're paying her back the loan that she's given us for the car. She doesn't want the money back. We want to pay it back to her, because there's pride all round, pride and generosity and love, and it's all good, but everyone's happy. And so that was in June last year. Cut to, it's a nice Ford Focus, thank you very much, very happy with it. Cut to last Wednesday night. Ben was, again, it's always Ben, it's always late at night. What's the common theme here? Maybe worth looking into. Ben was driving back from another friend's house, and I was on the phone to him actually. He was hands-free, thankfully, because he's a good boy. And while I was talking to him, he suddenly shouted out in a panic because the steering had locked up and he could no longer control the car. Thankfully, he was going down a very, very windy residential street and going very, very slowly. He was able to safely bring the car to a standstill at the side of the road. But once he turned it off, he couldn't turn it back on again. The electrics were blinking and going crazy, and nothing on the ignition. So we didn't know what was going on. I called the AA, and because we have membership through our bank account, and was horrified to find out that they couldn't help because the car was out of its MOT and had been since August last year. Now bear in mind it's January now. So for anyone who's not in the UK, an MOT is a certificate of roadworthiness, essentially, that your car has to go through every 12 months, and it's a legal requirement of your insurance and a legal requirement of being able to drive it on the road and only the car. It's really, really big deal. And it's basically a load of checks, and if your car passes all of these checks on all the different functions in the engine, then, and the things that can go wrong with it, and the tyres, and the safety of it, the car, then it's deemed roadworthy for the next 12 months. Obviously things can go wrong in that time, but at that point you've got 12 months until you have to do it again. So because we did not have an MOT, the AA couldn't help us. So they weren't able to send somebody, but what they did say we could do was, we can send you recovery for the car, so we can deliver it to where you want us to deliver it to, but at your own expense. I was like, oh gosh, okay, that's going to cost a lot of money. So we were trying to work out, Ben and I are not very good with cars at all. We were trying to Google stuff, and because Ben was, every time we tried the ignitions, a different thing would flash up on the dashboard. But one of them things that had flashed up was the immobiliser. So we thought, right, okay, maybe it's just the immobiliser, maybe it's an anti-theft device. So we were trying all sorts of things, me by remote, me on the phone, him stuck in the car, only about a 10-minute drive away from home, so not a million miles away, but it was cold and it was late. He had no electrics in the car, it was getting colder. So we looked up the immobiliser, and one of the things it said is there's this sequence of turning it on, holding it, turning it off, which you can reset the immobiliser, but it needs to be done with the key that is registered to the car. Now, when we bought the car, it only had one key, so we got a second one cut. And we were thinking, well, maybe Ben's key is not registered and mine's the registered key, so maybe my key needs to be the one to try and reset the... This was all nonsense, by the way. So anyone who knows anything about cars is going, what are you talking about? I know now that this was never going to work. But I had to get my key to there. So I got an Uber. I packed Ben a little emergency supply bag with a jumper and a jacket and some sandwiches and various bits and pieces, and went. And if nothing else, just give him company. We couldn't get it to work, so I phoned the AA back and said, yes, it's me again, you're going to have to send recovery, and it was going to be several hours. They said, actually, the gentleman arrived within about 20 minutes of placing the call, and we were absolutely, I just cracked my thumb. You know what I'm like. And he was there very, very quickly, and he was brilliant, actually. He said, from what you've told me, he said, it sounds like it's the alternator belt. I went, okay, good. He said, so we got the bonnet open, and he fished inside, went, yep, there it is, and pulled out this snapped alternator belt. Which explains why we'd lost power to the power steering. So it hadn't locked, it had just lost its power steering, so it was impossible, it was hard for Ben to move it. And also explained why we could then not start the car, because there was no connection between the battery and the engine. Well, that's what I think it means. I'm not going to pretend I know for sure. So he then said, well, where do you want me to take the car? I said, well, there's the garage that we go to is probably about a 15-minute drive from here and about a 10-minute walk, 15-minute walk from our house at the other end. Obviously, it's the middle of the night. By this point, it was nearly midnight. And we can't tell them it's going to be there. We're just going to have to, we'll contact them in the morning and hope that they can do something about it. He said, well, at your discretion, I can leave the car wherever you like. So fine. So took the car there, but this was so weird. Because of COVID restrictions, Ben and I, were not allowed to travel in the cab with the recovery gentleman, the driver. So the only way he could get us there as well was to have us sitting in our car while he winched our car up onto the back of his truck, and then we were driven through the streets of London up on this. It was the most peculiar experience. I don't know if anyone's experienced that. I felt I was doing some sort of Hollywood movie or something like that, where you're in a car, but then they're not actually driving. They're on this low loader thing, so it gives the illusion of movement. It was the most surreal thing. Anyway, long story short, he delivered us there. We managed to find a parking space, and it was an unrestricted parking space as well. We could leave it there as long as we liked. So we thanked him and we went on our way and walked home. Next morning, I phoned the garage and said, help. And they said, it's going to be a week. We can't book you in for another week. I said, well, I can't go anywhere else. The car is 100 metres away from your body shop and we can't move it. So as soon as you can, please. And they managed to get the car that day, actually. They said it was going to be another week, but they didn't like the idea of it being out on the street without an MOT. So they brought it into their workshop area and discovered it needed 3 new tyres. And then they discovered that both springs, the coils in the front suspension, left and right, were broken and dangerous. And it needed a full service and an MOT and the alternator belt replacing. And with the cost of the recovery and what Ben and I have just paid for the car, It's £1,300. It's a worry, I have to say. We don't have £650 spare lying around at the moment after 2 years with very little work. But we need a car. And it's a good car. And it's a nice car, we like it. So we needed to get it back on the road. So you pay your money and you say, bye-bye, it's only money, bye-bye money, how's it goes? Woo! So that was not a great deal of fun. And what else has been going on? So today I went into the clinic where I get my HIV care to talk to a group of research doctors and assistants about potentially enrolling on a study program called the Rio study program. And it's basically there are doctors who deliver care, and there are doctors in the HIV sector, and there are doctors who are looking at future ways of being able to manage HIV, being able to maybe cure it, maybe find vaccinations, or all the kind of research study things that you would expect to be going on. And a lot of the stuff that goes on in the world of HIV happens at my clinic. It's one of the top research labs for HIV study in the world. And obviously, whenever there's a new procedure or a new drug or a new something like this, at a certain point, it needs to be tested on human beings. So they design these study programs, and they have very tight parameters of who would be eligible, what the eligibility criteria would be. And for this particular study, they are looking for people who started treatment, antiretroviral therapy, for HIV infection very, very shortly after picking up the infection in the first place. And that's me. So as far as I can tell, I was on treatment within about 6 or 7 weeks, maybe 4 to 7 weeks of picking up the HIV virus, which means lots and lots of different things. I don't want to go into too much detail here because it's a knitting podcast, but it's just about my life, and I'm an HIV positive man. So in terms of what that means, so when HIV starts doing what it does in someone's body, not me, let's talk about somebody who doesn't exist, but somebody who has picked up HIV, and it starts sort of inserting its DNA, its genetic code, into some of the cells in that person's body. And there are some like long-lived hiding cells that it can insert its DNA into, which can't be accessed by the drugs that people take for HIV. This is one of the reasons why HIV is so difficult to cure. It's because it builds what's called the latent reservoir. So it's this pool of long-living cells which are basically dormant versions of HIV. So if I were to stop taking the medication I take, those dormant cells could wake back up again and start popping out new bits of virus. It's all very clever stuff. And the longer somebody has HIV active in their body before starting to take treatment, the bigger that viral reservoir can become. So in somebody like me, who was on treatment within a few weeks of getting the infection, my viral reservoir is likely to be really, really small. So that makes me a useful candidate for lots of things that need to be tested, where the size of the viral reservoir, the latent reservoir, is it could be a factor. So basically the larger the latent reservoir, the more difficult it would be for certain treatments to work on it, for example. So they try to test these treatments on people with a very small latent reservoir just to see if it works at all, and then maybe use that data to build the treatment so that it will work for people with a larger viral latent reservoir. That's in very simple terms. That's all my brain can really cope with, and I hope that made sense the way I described it. So I have been approached because I fit those eligibility criteria, and the treatment itself, the study that they're looking at, is something called BNABs. Now we're going to get into some nitty gritty here, buckle up. BNAB stands for broadly neutralizing antibodies. So there are some people who are able to regulate and control the levels of HIV in their bodies naturally without the use of the drugs that I take every day. Some people don't need to take those and still manage to not have the disease progress within them to damaging levels. If I stopped taking those, my viral load would build and I would become sick eventually. So these people have their bodies can produce a certain type of antibody. It's like the immune stuff, when you get a cold, your body fights it off with antibodies. Similar sort of stuff. Your body tries to fight the HIV virus, and most of the time it's unsuccessful. But in some people, it's a little bit more successful. So they've taken these BNABs and they've sort of genetically enhanced them to try and cover a broad spectrum of different types of HIV, because there's lots of different types of HIV infection out there. And it is that they want to look at how these BNABs interact with the mechanisms of my immune system by giving me an infusion of these BNABs. And then the scary bit. In order to see if the BNABs are doing their job or if my body is interacting with the BNABs in the right way, I would have to take what's called an ATI. I can't remember what the A stands for, but the TI stands for treatment interruption. So it means I would stop taking these, which is of course terrifying, because when you stop taking the drugs, it means if I stop taking those tomorrow, then within a couple of weeks, the HIV that's in my body would start replicating again and it would start doing its thing. Obviously, this is all being done in a controlled environment. But I haven't yet decided whether or not it's right for me or I'm right for it. I think they're really good people and they need some data, and I'm very much of a mind to think that I want to help as much as I can. I want to use my situation for the greater good. But there are various health risks. There's a lot. I have to go into the clinic a lot. They would be monitoring my viral load every week to see, and they've explained not if I experience viral rebound, but when. There's all sorts of other things to consider as well, because this has to be a properly conducted scientific experiment. They can't just give the BNABs to people and watch them. They have to have a control group of people who are not being given the BNABs. So the control group would be given a placebo, and I wouldn't know, and they wouldn't know either, whether or not I was in the BNABs arm of the trial or the placebo arm of the trial. I would still go in to the clinic and I would still have an infusion, but if I'm not in the BNABs arm of the trial, my infusion would be saline solution. So of course I would then be stopping treatment as if I just decided to stop taking my drugs tomorrow. So it's a lot to consider. It's a lot to consider. It's a lot to consider because at a certain point my viral load would start going up and I would then start being infectious again, so the whole U equals U message wouldn't apply for the duration of the time that I was on the study, and that obviously has potential risks for those around me, but it also has risks for my long-term ongoing health, which is something I've always fiercely protected. It's a big deal. So that's a little window into what I've been doing today. Sorry if you're not particularly interested in that or the scientific stuff. I don't want to talk about this. It's all a bit mucky and weird. But I think these things are really useful to discuss openly, actually. And one of the things I've always done as an HIV advocate and stigma buster is to try and usualize everything by talking about this stuff. And I think this study is really, really important. And I've told them that I'm bouncing backwards and forwards. I don't like the idea of being on the placebo arm, and I don't get any control over that. I don't like the idea of the study only coming to a halt when I've had 6 consecutive weeks of viral load tests above 1,000, viral load above 1,000. At the moment, my viral load is undetectable, which means it's under 50, under 40 maybe, which is, and up to 200 is what's called virally suppressed, which means I can't pass it on sexually to any of my partners. But above 1,000, you're definitely infectious again, and that's a worry. I flip-flop backwards and forwards, I really do. You can tell. I'm using you like therapy, and I apologise for that. I don't apologise for that, actually. This is what's on my mind, and I'm talking about what's on my mind. It's a big deal. There's a big part of me that really wants to take part. It's a big part of me. And then there's another part of me that's a bit frightened. They are under great pains to tell me that I can stop, and I can stop the study, and I can resume my treatment at any point, even without any provocation, just because I want to. So the ball really is in my court, and the reins are in my hands. But we'll have to see. We'll have to see. That's why I've got mask beard. That's because I was out and out first thing today. Anyway, thank you for listening. I don't know that I'm going to be particularly asking people for their views on what they think about that. I'm not going to say please don't give me your views on those on that kind of stuff. I don't know that it's very helpful to me to hear other people's views, because everyone's situation is entirely individual, and their perspective will be very different from my own, and in the kindest way possible, it's only my perspective that matters in this one. But I just thought you might be interested to know what's going on there. It's quite they did say, while I'm flip-flopping, the answer probably needs to be no. They're very good people, but I don't know. It's really, really hard. It's really hard. This could be a very useful study for people, but I don't know. Anyway, enough about that. You can tell it's on my mind quite a lot, can't you? Because I can't get off the subject. So, in the last podcast episode, in the 81th, I'm saying that just for you, Micah, just for you. This is the 82th. Next time will be the 83rd. I didn't do any number roundup. I thought that people weren't liking it. So maybe people don't like it, I don't know. But one person said to me, I really missed the numbers. So I'm going to quickly whiz through a little bit of information about what number 82 has significant about it in the world of mathematics. So this is the 82th Sockmatician Podcast episode, and the 82th number is 82. To be honest, on the Wikipedia page, there's not a great deal to be said about 82. It's the 23rd semi-prime. Here we go. He's back. It's the 20. Or should I say it's the 23rd semi-prime number. And a semi-prime number is a number which is the product, as in the multiplication, of 2 prime numbers. So a prime number is 3, a prime number is 7. So you multiply 3 and 7 together, you get 21. And 21, therefore, is a semi-prime number. So a prime number, for anyone who's going, I don't even know what a prime number is. Why should you, unless you're interested? A prime number is a number that can only be divided by 1 and itself. So 5 is prime because you can't divide it by 1, 2, 3. Well, you can divide it by 1. You can't divide it by 2 or 3 or 4, but you can divide it by 5. But nothing in between. And 4, for example, is not prime because you can divide it by 2 as well as 1 and 4. Gotcha. So that's semi-prime numbers. It's a companion Pell number. Bear with me, I'm going to have to look at the page for this. So the Pell number, and it says here very helpfully, not to be confused with Bell number, just in case you were about to. In mathematics, the Pell, P-E-L-L, numbers are an infinite sequence of integers known since ancient times that comprise the denominators of the closest rational approximations to the square root of 2. What? So the square root of 2 is whatever number you get if you multiply it by itself and you square it and you get 2 as the answer. And so the closest rational approximations are like fractions, where you've got like 3/4, a 3, a line, and a 4. 3/4. Now the denominator is the bottom number of a fraction, and these the Pell numbers are the so there are approximate fractions for the square root of 2, and one of them is 1/1. One is 3/2, 3 divided by 2. One is 7 divided by 5. One is 17 divided by 12. One is 41/29. So, but those bottom numbers, 1, 2, 5, 12, and 29, the denominators of those fractions, they're the Pell numbers. Now, what are the companion Pell? That's not even a companion Pell number. So the numerators of the same sequence, the numerators of the top half of the fraction, are the companion Pell numbers. So these numbers form a second infinite sequence and begin. So 2, 6, 14, 34, and 82. I don't get that. Because it's 1, 2. I don't really understand that. It doesn't seem to make any difference. Shall we move on from the companion Pell numbers? Let's move straight back to where we were. There's only 2 more. So 82 is also a palindromic number, not in base 10. So we count in 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So we count in base 10 before we go to the next column of digits. But you can have other counting systems. Binary, for example, is base 2. And a palindromic number is a number. You know what a palindrome is? It's a something that reads the same backwards and forwards. So in base 10, 22 is a palindromic number. 33, 101, 151. You know, the same backwards and forwards in base 10. Now 82 is palindromic in base 3 because it's written as 10001 in base 3. In base 9, it's written as 101. And in base 40, it's written as 22. All of those are palindromic numbers. So 82 is palindromic in all of those bases. With me? Great. You're going to love this next one. It's our old favourite. 82 is a happy number. Wouldn't you like to be a happy number yourself? What's wrong with being a happy number? Shall I explain what a happy number is? In number theory, which is what we're talking about, a happy number is a number which eventually reaches 1 when replaced by the sum of the square of each digit. What? Okay, so 13 is a happy number. I don't know why I showed you 4 fingers. So 13 is a happy number. And 13 is made up of the digits 1 and 3. Yeah, that's important. So if you square both of those, so 1 multiplied by 1 and 3 multiplied by 3, and then add those things together, so 1 multiplied by 1 equals 1, and 3 multiplied by 3 equals 9. Add those together, 1 and 9, and you get 10. Then you do the same thing to it. 1 and 0, square those. So 1 multiplied by 1 is 1, plus 0 squared is 0, and you get 1. So because you can keep doing that, every time you get a different answer, you apply the same process to it, and eventually, if it's a happy number, you'll get back to the answer 1. It says here, so on the other hand, 4 is not a happy number because the sequence starting 4 squared equals 16, and then you've got 1 and 6. 1 squared and 36 becomes 37 added together, which is 3 and 7. So 3 squared is 9 and 7 squared is 49. 9 and 49 added together is 58. 5 squared and which is 25, and 8 squared, which is 64, which is 89. And anyway, you keep going, and you never get to 1. That's the point. Apparently, you will at some point in the sequence get back to 4. And so before it gets to 1, it'll come back to 4, which is where we started. So 4 is not happy because you start with 4, and on the sequence of doing this repetitive algorithm thing, you can get back to 4 without ever getting to 1, which means you'll never get to 1, because once you start to 4, it just goes all the way around in a circle again. So 82 is that. I want to work it out. I haven't even looked at it. So 8 and 2. 64 plus 4 is 68. So 6 and 8 is 36 and 64. 36 and 64 is 100. And there you go. 100 gives you 1. So 82 is a happy number because it gets you back to 1. Now, don't ask me why that might be useful on any level. I don't know, because it actually says here, the origin of happy numbers is unclear. Happy numbers were brought to the attention of Reg Allenby, a British author and senior lecturer in pure mathematics at Leeds University, by his daughter, who had learned of them at school. However, they may have originated in Russia. No one really knows why. No one knows who looked this up or knows what a happy number is. But if you're not a happy number, and we are all happy numbers today, because we're all number 82, then you can be called an unhappy number or a sad number. And that is really sad. So today we're all happy numbers, and that's kind of all there is. I have had the great pleasure this week of being the first interviewee for a new audio knitting podcast. And I would like to share the details of it with you. My very good friend Lisa Conway and her friend Denise, whose last name I don't actually know. Lisa and Denise are starting a new knitting podcast, audio only. So this will be through iTunes and other podcasting software, called Knit, Design, Edit, Sleep, Repeat. Knit, Design, Edit, Sleep, Repeat. And the focus is very much on the talking to designers about their design process. And getting tips and tricks for budding designers and things like that. And Lisa herself is a tech editor, and that's where the edit part of Knit, Design, Edit, Sleep, Repeat comes in. And they have just, as of recording this, they've just uploaded their sample podcast episode. It's really, really weird because just as I've said that, a little message has popped up on my WhatsApp notifications on my phone from Lisa herself. I'll have to tell her that when I next speak to her. Beetlejuice. So the sample one has just gone live. So I will put a link. Actually, I probably won't put it here. What I'll do is I'll get a link in underneath this, a clickable link, where you can find the podcast and hopefully check it out. I believe on the 1st of February, yes, which is 10 days from now, 12 days from now, there will be 3 episodes hitting all at the same time. I'm one of the interviewees. I don't know who the others are, and I'm not going to say anything, so I don't know that that's been announced yet. I don't know anyway. But it's going to be some really, really interesting people. And Lisa and Denise are brilliant people, and I think this is something that they've really planned out and thought hard about how to do this really, really well. And we had a lovely three-way Zoom chat, recording it and making sure that I recorded my end, they recorded their end, just in case there was any audio problems. And it was lovely. The chat lasted just under an hour, and it was just sort of an introduction for anyone who may not know who I am and what kind of stuff I do and the kind of things that float my boat and where I started and how I got to be where I am now. So I I really, really enjoyed talking to them both. We had a lot of fun, lots of giggles, and hopefully you will enjoy that as well. Should you check them out, so do. That's the plug for Knit, Design, Edit, Sleep, Repeat. Knit, Design, Edit, Sleep, Repeat, or as I like to call it, Cadiza. Cadiza. Knit, Design, Edit, Sleep, Repeat. And I wish them all the very best of luck with this. Excuse me. It can always be daunting to start out on a new venture, but the one thing I've always said in all of my knitting classes is never confuse daunted with thwarted. Just because something's daunting doesn't mean you shouldn't attempt it. And I wish them every success with Knit, Design, Edit, Sleep, Repeat, and look forward to hearing all their other interviews in the months and years to come, let's hope. Right, in terms of actual knitting content from me, I have nothing new to... Oh, that's not true! I've got a cast on and a cast off. I've got an absolute finished object that wasn't even percolating in my brain last time I spoke to you. So in 3 weeks, I've managed, 2.5 weeks, whatever this is, I've managed to design, knit, finish, and today wear a scarf. It's a very easy scarf, thankfully. It looks lovely, I'm very happy with it. But I'm not going to show it to you now. No. You're going to have to wait. You're just going to have to wait. I want to sort of have a quick recap on the stuff that I have been doing, the other stuff that's on my needles. None of this has had much love, I have to say. Oops, I've managed to pull this off the needles as well. So I'm gonna fix that later. This is the skirt. I'm calling it my scrappy scarf at the moment. It needs a nicer name than that. But it is literally, it's a repetitive pattern that goes all the way up it, and the colours are random. They're all the colours of the Sockmatician edition range, my own yarn range, available from sockmatician.com/sockmashop. But I'm just sort of dipping into them at random. It's sort of curated randomness, I should say, on these. It's sort of curated randomness. There are areas where I think, oh, I haven't had one of those colours for a while, and I'll do a bit of that. But literally, I am using up some scraps. So that blue, I only had enough to do a few rows of. But the interesting thing, I did talk about this last time, but in case you missed it or in case you've forgotten, the interesting thing about this, it's not double knitting. No, it's not. It's this weird reversible two-sided thing, which is it's a rib. It's a rib with some slip stitches, which creates a pattern which is not reversed on the back at all. If I fold it over, look, it's exactly the same on the back, the same orientation of colours. The colours are not switched around at all. Isn't that extraordinary? And what's more, it's only ever worked with one yarn at a time. So you just knit, you knit, purl, knit, purl, knit. It's a 1x1 rib. It doesn't look like it. It condenses itself so it looks like stocking stitch, but actually it's not. Look at that. See how that comes apart? If you pull it, it very much is a rib. But because some of the stitches are slipped, there's kind of little floats, and those little floats condense the rib so it doesn't splay out. So when it's in its relaxed state, it very much looks just like stocking stitch on both sides with the colours exactly the same. It's a fascinating technique and really, really simple to work. It's worked very much like mosaic knitting, if anyone's ever done any mosaic knitting, which is why the design on it works the way it does, because it only lends itself to the kind of, excuse me, I don't know what's going on with frog in my throat. It only lends itself to the kind of designs that work in mosaic knitting. So it has to be a certain type of pattern that you can use, but love it, absolutely love it. So it's really wide, and it's going to be incredibly warm. It's almost blanket size, and it feels really lovely because it's got a sort of feel of double knitting about it. not quite so squishy. It's a little bit denser than that, but it's thick because it's knit purl, knit purl, knit purl, and they go across like that. So I'm really enjoying doing this. I don't get a great deal of time on this when I'm doing other things, but it's I like it. I like it a lot. So that's had some attention this week. Not great. You can see I need to. I don't know if I said this last time. Can you see at this end? Lots and lots and lots of hello, lots and lots and lots of ends to weave in, and then from this point on, none. I just started spit splicing. I was being very diligent about making sure that I finish, because the rows are worked in pairs, so you work there and back with one yarn and switch the two, and then there and back with the next, and switch again, there and back. So it's always 2 rows at a time, and I was very diligent up to that. Below my nose there, up to that point, by making sure I completed 2 rows. Now, I'm thinking I don't want to do all that weaving in because I hate weaving in ends. So what I do is when I get to the end of a ball of yarn, or a scrap of yarn, I just spit splice with the next one, and you get about 3 stitches worth of marling where the 2 colours completely blend in with each other, and I just carry on. And it doesn't matter to me if it happens in the middle of a row. It's a really good exercise in letting go of that kind of OCD, the idea of don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good, which I think is really, really good advice. Don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good, and sort of like throwing out the baby with the bathwater in the pursuit of perfection. Well, actually, no one's ever going to see where those stitches marl together. It really doesn't matter, and it saves me a lot of time. And the Sockmatician edition yarn spit splices really, really well. It's merino, alpaca, and possum, and it's you know I'm quite diligent with my spit splicing. I have to say, it might take me longer than weaving in an end. So let's examine the mania and the madness of the psychology of this knitter, shall we, for a second? I don't like weaving in ends, it's time consuming, he says. Actually, I probably just don't enjoy the process of doing it because it's not about the time. If I were to add up all the time I spend spit splicing, it's probably going to be longer than the time it would take me to weave in all the ends. So when I do spit splice, this yarn, it's what's called, it's DK weight, which standard name is 8 ply, but it's actually a 5-fold 8 ply. So I'm going to see if I can, it's on camera, I don't know if I can. So there are 5 little strands, which the uninitiated like me would always call a ply, but actually there's 5 of them, and they're called folds at the mill where this is made. So it's a 5-fold 8 ply, 8 ply being the sort of the standard thickness really of DK weight yarn. So my 4 ply yarn is actually a 3-fold 4 ply. There's only 3 plies in the 4 ply yarn. It's 4 ply because of the thickness. It's a sock weight yarn. It's very confusing. So what I do with this is I divide 3 and 2, and I snap 2 of them off, and then on the other one I snap 2 of them off, so I've got 3 plies left. I divide them like that, I interconnect them like that, and then I twist the yarns again. Really, really, really twist them. So yes, for that brief period there are 6 folds rather than 5, so it is marginally thicker for that bit. But then I twist, suck, and felt them away, and it works really, really well. So it is quite time consuming, but actually it's quite fun to do a really good job. And when you're joining colours, the same colour to the same colour, it's really invisible. It's really completely invisible. When you're not, obviously, you get a bit of marling. I don't care. So that one is coming along. There's no end in sight for that one. It's just when it gets to a nice, it's not long enough yet, I don't think. I mean, it sort of is, but I would want it. I like a scarf that sort of starts at the waist, goes round again, and then down to the waist. At the moment, this is down to the waist, but with no round. So I've got to go round my neck again. I basically got to do that much more of it between my fingers, and then I'll be happy. And then I'll stop. at some point. It has got an end, so there's a definite end on the pattern, so I'll stick that end on that end when it's long enough and we're good to go. So that's that. That one's yeah, ongoing. This one I haven't touched since you last saw it, unfortunately. I haven't had the time. This one needs a little bit more sort of brain power from me, and I've been a little bit tired. This is the cowl. It's just starting to splay. I'm just doing some further increases at this point to let it go, and it's going to widen out and become, I think I wore it like this for you before, so it'll be worn like that, but it's, you see, it's just starting to splay a bit, so I want it to come to about here, so it goes to the shoulder, so it's worn like an old-fashioned dickie, really. But this is, for anyone who doesn't remember, this is 4-colour triple knitting. So you can see I've got 4 yarns, the green, the yellow, the brown and the blue, all connected to it at the same time. And there are 3 layers of knitting here. So the inside looks as nice as the outside. So the colours are switched. You can see it's all brown at the top here. It's blue on the inside. And the top layer of leaves are blue and yellow, as on the inside there, brown and green. So that's how the colours all work, and there's nothing to say about this that wasn't said last time, so I'm going to move on from that. I want to do some more in that. I'm really looking forward to seeing the shape develop and seeing how it comes out, but I haven't had the brain space for it, and I'll come to why in a minute. This one. I do love this. This is one of the squishiest textures in the world. Look at that. It's so gorgeous. Cables. It's double knitted brioche, and they're because it's reversible cables like that. It's glorious. I do love it. And this one is getting quite long now, so I'm standing up, it's on the floor, and it comes up to my neck. So it's probably a good 5 feet long. If I were to give it I mean, it's nearly there. I mean, it's not nearly there. I want to do that much more to it. But it's a super duper quick knit in terms of working this. It's only got 20 pairs of stitches working across the row, and I cable using my I love that cable needle. It's beautiful, isn't it? I cable every 8th row, and there are just 3 cables per row. I mean, it couldn't be easier. It's a 2-pair over 2-pair cable 3 times in a row. You offset the cables and you do them in the different directions to get this lovely braided effect. But look at the texture on that. Look how thick it is. Squishy and lovely. I really enjoy knitting this. This one is great for telling knitting. This one, it's so easy to just go, not have to think about this one. So I'm thoroughly enjoying this. I had a little bit of hiatus because I had to wait for some more yarn to arrive because I'd run out of these 2 colours. But I've now got these ones still to add in, but plenty of these. So I'm over halfway, but I'm not far over halfway. So it's going to be quite long. I may not need all of that yarn, I don't know. It's not about need, is it? It's about lovely and squishy. So this is, these colours, by the way, the red is called Montagnier and the blue is called Bruton, again from the Sockmatician edition yarn range. Stop my needles from clattering over the floor, but isn't that lovely? Isn't that gorgeous? And for anyone who doesn't remember, this is the reknit of the one that went away for the photo shoot and never made it back. There's no blame attached to this thing. These things happen. These things sometimes just happen, and I have to get used to it. Oh dear. So before I show you the new arrival, that's going to be the finale. Oh, but actually, do you know what? This is my Christmas present from my husband. I'm a big fan of Keith Haring. Keith Haring was a pop art street artist working in New York in the 80s and early 90s. And he was a big advocate and campaigner for HIV awareness, and was I think he was one of the founder members of ACT UP, Fight AIDS. And he died in 93. Do you know what? I want to tell you the right answer to that. Keith Haring. He died in. No, that's the wrong one. I want his Wikipedia, really, don't I? He died in 1990. He was just 32 years old, 31, and he died of AIDS in 1990. So 6 years before effective medication came to the fore. He was one of those pioneers who just lived in that tragic window where there was no help available. But I absolutely love the bold, geometric, graphic nature of his work. And my wonderful husband bought me this set of canvas bags featuring the work of Keith Haring. And here's one. Isn't that just fabulous? New York there on one side, and Statue of Liberty on the other. Keith Haring's work is typified by these big, bold black lines and these sort of featureless stick figures. This is one of the other lines, which kind of looks like people, but kind of doesn't. It's sort of legs and eyes, but not. I love that. And then there's this one as well, which is he was friends with Andy Warhol, and so this is his version of Andy Warhol drawn as Andy Mouse. I love these, absolutely love these. So this is where that scarf has been living, and it's really, really nice. It's really lovely. Thank you, Ben. So you want a book update, don't you? So I have been not idle at all since I last saw you. I have been adding more and more and more videos to the page, which is available only to the backers at the moment. And all of you, thank you again. Thank you so much for, if anyone who's watching is one of the backers for the book, thank you for your support. It has been amazing to have this, the time to do this journey. And I know the book is late, but it is really, really good. So I had miscounted. I thought there were 87 videos in total that needed to be made. Turns out there's 95. I found some more only last night. I was like, oh, I've got to film them as well. But I have done 87 of them. 87 of them are now live on that page. So if you are one of the backers and you do have access to the Sockmatician's Double Knitted Brioche ebook videos page, then there are 87 of the 95 videos there. I've got 8 left to do. 3 of them aren't anything to do with Double Knitted Brioche. It's a couple of cast-ons, so I may not get round to those anytime soon, but they're not anything that you can't find by searching anything else as well, so you're not missing out anything at all. So I've got 5/8 still to do. I have also and Liz, this is hopefully this will interest you. You know who you are. I'm not going to name you fully for your own privacy, but Liz and I were talking on email about the possibility of a missing chapter in the book. So anyone will remember that I've written the manuscript, and it's been with my tech editor Michelle since before Christmas, and she's very close to returning it to me now. But I have written another chapter to it, which is a chapter on troubleshooting. It was one that I've been umming and ahhing about whether or not I should include. I knew in my heart of hearts I needed to. I just didn't want to put myself to the effort, but I've done it. And so it's a chapter on what to do if things go wrong while you're doing Double Knitted Brioche, because it's all very well when things go right, but if you know what to do when things go wrong, you suddenly don't get scared of things going wrong, and when you're not scared of things going wrong, you don't go wrong in the first place. So it's this wonderful upward spiral of confidence and learning and experience that all happens there. So I've done this chapter. It's about how to tink back, how to put Double Knitted Brioche back on the needles if it comes off, so you can rip things out with confidence and then put it back on the needles, or if you pull a needle out by mistake, because we've all done that, then you can carry on. But also, I think most usefully, is how to reconstruct a dropped ladder of stitches. There will be videos to accompany that as well, but I've done it all in the text step by step. It's I'm really pleased with it, I have to say. Really very happy with that as a as a final denouement to the book. I think it's really adding value to the book, and it's really going to be a very welcome addition for anybody who wants to purchase it. So I've done that, and I've done all the videos, and this close to getting the book back. Once I get the book back, it's about fixing the errors in it, papering over any gaps that I've left as far as Michelle and I can discuss and ascertain, and then photographing all the samples. I'm still planning a big podcast episode all about the samples of the book. I'm really excited about that, and then doing the layout. That's the bit that scares me. I'm not going to lie. That's the bit that scares me. But it's coming. It really is coming. I'm very excited about it. And now I think, now that I've got to the end of the videos and they're all up and ready, I don't feel it's quite such an insurmountable battle. I've been spending a lot of time looking at video editing screens. And of course, here I am about to do it again. But I'm really very pleased with how it came about and how it's all coming together. So now I've got a scarf to show you. I really like this. These are the needles upon which it was knitted. These are my Chowgu interchangeables. No, I'm not under any commission, but these are the best needles out there. 4.5s, lace tips. And these are the colours I used. Dark grey. And I'm going to say turquoise because in the Sockmatician edition rainbow of colours that are based on the original 8 stripes of the Pride rainbow flag, the original 8 stripes also included a pink and a turquoise. So this is the turquoise, but of course we can all see it's green. It's not exactly turquoise at all, it's green. But I'm calling it the turquoise. It's the one that's called, funnily enough, Taylor. Not named after me, it's named after Elizabeth Taylor for all of her work as an HIV pioneer. This scarf, well, it's inspired by the work of, well, two people actually. I've got 2 people to thank for this. It's inspired by, technique-wise, the work of sweater spotter Anna Maltz, who is responsible for creating the marled technique. Marled is where it's a brilliantly simple concept where you're knitting garter stitch with 2 yarns of different colour held together, held double, so just making knit stitches with both strands together, and you get this wonderful texture of the colours marling together. But in her technique, what you can do is you can stop using 2 of them and just use 1 of them and strand the other one across the back, so you get a panel of just one of the 2 colours. Or you can switch to the other colour, so you've got like 3 options of colours, colour A, colour B, and the marling of A and B together. When I took Anna's class a few years ago and learned how to do this with her, she's brilliant, and I love her. My head just went, this will work with double knitting, and I played around with it, and you've probably seen me talk about it before for those of you who are long-term viewers, and I've done quite a lot of swatching, never really come up with the idea for an actual project until now. So recently, in one of the Thursday night Zoom be-alongs that I host every Thursday at 8 PM UK time, check out the link on my Instagram profile if you want to join. One of the attendees is a lovely lady called Jackie, and she's put together this absolutely beautiful double knitted scarf. It's double knitting all the way along, but she'd utilised cables. Now, one really beautiful, very quite intricate cable, and switching the colours around. So the background of the scarf was one colour, and the cable was shown in another colour. And what I loved about it was she offset the cable to one side, and I apologies and thanks to Jackie, I have completely stolen that idea of putting a cable off centre. I make no apologies for that. It's a different cable, it's different techniques being used, and it's a completely different style, so it's not the same at all. That's my caveat. But I really love this. it looks like this. Oh, heavens. Look at that. So here we have the marled garter stitch. So it's really, really stretchy, like super stretchy that way, because of course garter stitch wants to condense itself that way. And then the two yarns, the dark grey and the green, turquoise, they separate to become this sort of deliberately not asymmetrical, but shorter, longer cable. Now, not only does it look like that on one side, it looks exactly the same on the other side, because these cables are double knitted. So the whole scarf across to here is marled garter stitch. It's literally just knitting with two yarns together. You double knit for 6 pairs of stitches, and then you're back to the marled garter stitch. It could not be simpler. And the cabling, oh, isn't it lovely, the texture that this comes out, and the joy of the way the colours ping out from this marled background. I absolutely love it. It's long, it's really long. And I put this morning, I woke up this morning and I put the fringe on it. I finished the knitting last night. But I put the fringe on it and I love it. But there's one thing, you know me, you know I'm a little bit ADHD. I decided that I couldn't simply, it's so, there's a lot of it, there really is. I couldn't deal with the idea of it just being the same all the way up. This is so unlike me, having a design which is this simplistic. And I know simple is good. I know it is. But in my OCD, ADHD knitting brain, I sometimes get very, very bored when I'm knitting something which is repetitive. You set it up and go, oh, this is really beautiful. And then you go, oh, this is really boring. Actually, this one isn't. I knitted this in, as I said, 2.5 weeks, 2 weeks. But I wanted to just add one little element to it that makes it different from this all the way up. And that element, so this is cables, right? This is cables, and this is all it is, a simple cable. But you carry on with this cable, and then towards the other end of the scarf, I wanted to put in one extra motif, and I am utterly in love with this extra motif. I wanted to, not using cables, using increases and decreases, I wanted to splay out the grey and the green strands of the cable and then bring them back together just once. And I tried it out, not knowing if any of these techniques were going to work. It worked so much better than I could ever possibly have hoped for. And there it is. Isn't that gorgeous? Look at that. I love that so much. So much. It's just try and look there. It's just, and of course it's entirely double-sided, so it looks like that on the back. There is a sort of different dominance, isn't there, with the two cables? There shouldn't be. It's just sort of, I think it's just an effect of the two sides. That one looks like it's black dominant. That one looks like it's green dominant. I think it's just one side that you see more prevalent than the other, but it's not actually anything different in the patterning. But isn't, so all of this up to here is cables, and then this cross here where the green disappears behind the grey there, that's a cable as well. But all of this section, the sort of the angle of the two columns, there's 3 stitches in each column, 3 pairs, there's 3 on each side. This is done with a decrease on this side and an increase in the middle, going both ways, and then nothing for a bit, and then switching the increases and decreases round to bring the columns back together. It's so deliciously simple and so effective. So actually, when I'm wearing this, if I stand up, It just adds that one extra little bit of visual interest, which is clearly not a mistake. So I think your eye is drawn to it. I mean, it really is. Your eye just goes zoom. But I love that. I love something that draws the eye. And I think we always think that our brains are good at spotting patterns. I think our brains are really good at spotting the anomalies in patterns. I've always said this. That to me is, it's a little bit of knitted heaven there. Now the interesting thing about this, because it's garter stitch and because it's marled, it's knitted quite densely. So this is 4.5mm needles, and it's DK weight yarn held double, so that's quite dense for the garter stitch. But I needed it to be a small needle because I didn't want these stitches to be too loose and baggy when it's just down to one single strand. So it is quite dense. It's really heavy. There's 500 grams of yarn in this, almost exactly. You can see I didn't have a great deal left. That's literally all that was left. There's 20 grams of each colour in the fringe alone. So yeah, it's yarn hungry, but it has a lovely weight to it, I have to say. It's denser and less squishy, I think, than double knitting. But because it's got the sort of the vertical stretch and bounce to it, that makes it hang well. And just, I love how this cable just cuts its line all the way through it. I love it, I really do. I wore it out today and I was worried. I'm not going to lie, I was worried. I thought, well, maybe the denseness of the texture will mean it's not actually that comfortable to wear. I couldn't have been more wrong. It's so warm, it's so cozy. Because of its weight, it feels really secure and it feels really comforting, actually. And it hasn't got a name yet. I don't know what to call it, but I am utterly in love with it, and I hope you are too. So this one, I've been a very good boy. I've written it up as I've gone along. So I'm planning over the next couple of days to take the photographs of it, and I want to release this one really, really quickly. That's the plan. So hopefully within the next couple of weeks you'll be able to get your grubby mitts on one of these if you would like to. And honestly, why would you not? Oh, look at it, it's gorgeous. I love that. I don't know what to call it, but there it is. That's not a bad haul for 2.5 weeks knitting, when I've done a couple of bits of other pieces as well. So there you go. I think that's probably about all we need to be talking about now. An hour and 10 minutes, pretty good. So thank you so much for stopping by. Thank you for allowing me into your spare time. I always appreciate that, because I know there's a lot of stuff out there that people could choose to occupy themselves with, and for you to choose to spend your time with me and allow me to spend your time with you is something that doesn't go unappreciated. Thank you so much for that. Thank you for being part of my ongoing journey. It really, really does make all the world of difference to me, knowing that you're out there, knowing that you're enjoying what I'm doing. Please say hello in the comments. Email me if you like, nathan@sockmatician.com, if you've got anything you'd like to say based on anything that I've discussed in this episode, which has been a bit of a covered lots of bases, hasn't it? So now I'm going to sign off, and I shall say my usual. So while this episode of this podcast is very definitely a finished object, just remember, as always, life is a work in progress. Just take it one stitch at a time, and I will see you on the next one. See you very soon. Bye-bye. Zip!